Okay, right. So Zhuangzi is another very famous Taoist philosopher, regarded as one of the founders of Taoism. And he is different from the Tao Te Ching in several ways. And one of them is his emphasis on freedom. So today we're going to talk about several topics which is prominent in the Zhuangzi. So the idea of being useless, very famous, unique, the philosophy of life and death, and fasting the heart, how to fast the heart. Okay, so who is Zhuangzi? Zhuangzi is one of the founders of the Daoist school as regarded by later philosophers. And Zhuang is his surname. Zhou is his first name. So he was an official in the liquor garden, and then he became a hermit afterwards. He doesn't like being an official at all. So he decided to quit. And he is he's like a poet, and he's like writing novels. His style is very different from the Tao Te Ching. Okay, so during his time, it was during the Warring States period in China, and the Warring States period is one of the most unstable political period throughout China. And there are several states fighting with each other, and all these states declare their kingdom, declare their rulership, and they don't recognize the other states. So you can imagine how the citizens are like. They are forced to join the army. They cannot farm, so they are very poor. There are a lot of people, dying on the streets, etc. So Zhuangzi was born during that kind of period. And he was located in one of the kind of smallest countries during the Warring States period. So he's from the Song kind of Song Emperor. But Song Emperor is really one of the small states, kind of states. And behind Song, there's Wei, which is larger, and this Chu, which is much larger. So you can imagine how suppressed the citizens in Song feels like. Oh. So what is the main differences between Laozi and Zhuangzi? Well, Laozi is normally regarded as kind of the founder of Taoism, even if he doesn't declare that. And Zhuangzi is not regarded as Laozi's disciple at all, but instead an independent thinker. The reason is that in the Zhuangzi, in the book, you can never find any quotation or description or discussion about Laozi's Tao Te Ching. Never a single word. So it is weird. Why in the Zhuangzi there's no reference to the Tao Te Ching? Well, but people still regard Zhuangzi as a Taoist, so group them together. So what are the similarities? There are indeed a lot of similarities in terms of attitude of life, in terms of ontology, Tao, that kind of thing. Well, but the style, the expression, and the emphasis are all different. And both the Zhuangzi and the Tao Te Ching are circulated from the beginning of the Han Dynasty. So they are mixed together, the two views. So the Zhuangzi is kind of a thick book, actually. But if you are interested and you haven't read it yet, my recommendation is that you read the first 7 chapters. The reason is that the first 7 chapters are regarded as really written by Zhuangzi himself. And all these 7 chapters contain the most important message conveyed by the Zhuangzi. And there are the outer chapters, written by so-called the followers of Zhuangzi, but you can see there are already a lot of discrepancies and maybe some contrary views to the original Zhuangzi's view. So it's like less representative of Zhuangzi's original view. And also there are miscellaneous chapters. Well, they're often discredited because of the nature. Also, yes, the question?
How many followers?
How many followers? He doesn't have an exact number of how many followers, and he doesn't mention a lot about who the followers are. So we have to guess. So it's like, okay, these people, probably they are followers, they wrote chapters, and these chapters are later compiled into part of the Zhuangzi chapters. But we don't really know who wrote these chapters. So there are no exact name of who wrote chapter 7, who wrote chapter 28, etc. It's like a collection of thoughts. Yeah. So key themes in the inner chapters. Freedom is one of them. And actually, freedom is a very heated topic in Western philosophy also. So we will see the difference between Zhuangzi's idea of freedom and the Western idea of freedom of will. So, and then we will talk about philosophy of life and death in the Zhuangzi. I think we don't have time to talk about truth and knowledge, maybe a little bit, and a little bit about ethical ideal if we still have time. So Watson, one of the translators of the Zhuangzi, says, well, Zhuangzi does not have clear arguments. He does not have a systematic layout of his thoughts. So it's very difficult to understand what he wants to convey. And the best way to read Zhuangzi is to read it like a novel. So it's enjoying the feeling when you read the text, not taking seriously every single word, but to feel the feeling. So he said, you have to repeat his words until one has ceased to think of what it is saying and develop an intuitive sense of the mind moving behind the words. Freedom. So Zhuangzi in the first chapter start with a story. And the story is about a bird, a big bird called the peng. And the peng, in the Northern Sea, there is a giant fish called the kun. And this fish is extremely large. So it's like hundreds of miles long. You can never imagine it. And then this fish transformed to become a bird. A giant bird called the peng, which has a wingspan hundreds of miles wide. When it charges into the air, its wings are like clouds hang in the sky. So it's like a beautiful scenery of the transformation of the bird. And then, as it flies higher, the world below disappears. So it's like you have to imagine yourself being the bird, looking down the sky and seeing nothing. It's like hazy distance. The sky is blue, but it's real color, or does it just look blue because it's so far away and goes off to infinity? When the peng looks down, it sees the same azure expanse. And then suddenly, Zhuangzi changes the topic, is changing the focus, talking about two little creatures, a cicada and a little dove. And they laughed at the peng. They saw the peng is so big. And they laughed and they say, we make an effort and fly towards an M or a 7-wood tree. And sometimes before reaching it, we don't know more, but drop to the ground. So we are little things. We can only fly very, low. What use is it for this creature, the peng, to rise 90,000 li, 90,000 miles, and make for the south? What is the purpose? We are so happy, right? So here are two questions. Why is Zhuangzi talking about flying? What message does Zhuangzi want to say? What do you think? Any thoughts? Yes. Yes.
Maybe that everyone should stick to their own nature and not try to be more than they really are.
Right. Very good. Any other thoughts? Yes.
I mean, there's a couple of things. I mean, the first one is perspectivism, as the small bird is looking up at the bigger bird,
Yes.
and it's only big relative to the small one, and the small one's only small relative to the big one. But also, the smaller bird is kind of defensive, like, why you? Yeah, like, they're looking up at the bigger one flying, and going, why are you doing what you're doing? You're so. But they're defensive because they're small. They have to put effort into flying. They're struggling, where the big one is just gliding. So it's kind of like they're very much action, and he's very much, or it is very much non-action.
So there is a comparison.
Yeah,
The smaller ones is like having less energy.
yeah. But it has to use more energy than the big one. The big one is just gliding, looking down.
Oh, okay. The big one doesn't need so much energy.
Yeah, where the other one's jumping around from tree to tree and trying to fly, and that's why it's defensive looking up, because it's putting so much effort in, and it's jealous that the bigger one doesn't have to put as much effort in.
So do you think Zhuangzi praises the big one or the small one?
I think he's commenting on how the smaller one is viewing from the perspective of the bigger one. So I think I don't know if he's praising it, but he's saying that the smaller one shouldn't be jealous of the big one; it should strive to glide like the big one.
Okay. So the smaller one should be content with their own
Yeah.
lives. Great. Okay.
Yeah, continuing to what David said, maybe breaking off, like, if we take in comparison of the smaller bird and the bigger bird, it could be breaking off from limitations and transcending into something of sort of your, higher nature, if that's what is represented by the big bird, when it transformed and gained its own sort of freedom in a way, in its own freedom and its own spiritual nature, spiritual freedom. So maybe he is trying to comment on that. and show
Great.
that.
Good. So for those of you who think that Zhuangzi thinks that we should be content with your current situation, like being a little bird or a little cicada, you should be contented, and this is what you can achieve, right? There are commentaries having similar views. And for, what's your name? I forgot.
Shot.
Ishan. Ishan. Okay. So for Ishan's interpretation, it is like saying, well, there's different degrees of freedom, and the pong bird exhibits more freedom, and the smaller bird exhibits less freedom. And this is the view also by some contemporary philosophers, including me. So we are going to look at these different interpretations. So here is Guo Xiang. Who is Guo Xiang? Guo Xiang is a thinker of Xuanxue, Neo-Daoist, during the Western Jin Dynasty. And actually, he has an official position. So he's the minister of the Ministry of Personnel, holding high governmental positions. But he's at the same time enthusiastic about Taoism. So people say, isn't it like he has a very complicated personality, loving political powers and loving Taoism naturalists at the same time? So it's like a bit complicated. So he thinks for the first chapter describing the pong and the little creatures, Zhuangzi wants to say they are both carefree because they are content with their own capacity. So the small bird does not envy the big pong, even the heaven and earth. And both have more than enough honor and desire. So if one is content with one's nature, there is no difference between the pong and the small creatures. So these are David's and Lucia's explanation, right? And also there's another commentator called Cheng Xuanying. Cheng Xuanying also have a similar view. The Cheng Xuanying is originally a recluse in East China Sea, and he responded to the call of Emperor of Tang and become an official. But at the same time, he holds an abbot position of the Xihua Temple. So he has official positions, he has a high status, and at the same time, he loves Daoism, and he was a hermit before that. So people say maybe he has goals. The ultimate goal is to go back to serve the government and the citizens. And he's being a hermit actually serves this purpose. It's like, I am pure, I don't have polluted desires, I am a hermit. So people think high about this guy and invited him to become a political figure. So his idea is also similar to Guo Xiang. He says, carefree and enjoying the nature is what is exhibited within the pong bird and the two little creatures. Both of them enjoy lives. Both of them are carefree. So why bother to travel thousands of miles over 6 months and do hardships and go so without being carefree and at ease? If you don't have the capacity, just stay there, right? That is all you need to do. But so Yishan's interpretation actually has a reason, because there are other descriptions after the depiction of the pong bird and the little creatures. So right after the description about these two scenarios, Zhuangzi goes on to say, if you go off to the green woods nearby, you can take along food for 3 meals. Just going to picnic, 3 meals is enough. But if you're going to 100 miles, you must grind your grain the night before. You must prepare for more food. And you must start getting the provisions together 3 months in advance, right? Because, that is the procedure. What do these two little creatures understand? So Zhuangzi is criticizing the little creatures. They don't understand. They don't understand how the pong feels, because they are so small. They walk through, the little bushes. They don't have the experience of transforming into big bird and looking down the sky. They don't understand. And then Zhuangzi says, little understanding cannot come up with great understanding. The short-lived cannot come up with the long-lived. So Zhuangzi actually is praising the pong bird in some perspective. But this guy has a greater perspective. He understands more. So my question, what kind of understanding is that? Why is Zhuangzi talking about understanding? What do you think? Just guess. What is that?
It's just a different, I think maybe it's different perspectives to view phenomena like flying, different experiences when flying.
Yes. Good. Yes.
Just building off that, is it like that our understanding is influenced by our perspective?
Yes.
So like the birds, the big bird's understanding is, it has that perspective to have a wider understanding, whereas the small one doesn't have the perspective for that wider understanding. There's something about it, nature or spirit.
Yes. Good. Isha.
So understanding of both of the perspectives of whether it's the little creatures or the pong birds, it is very subjective depending upon their position and capabilities of what they can do and not. Whether the little creatures are content with the amount they can gather or they can fly, it very much depends on how unaware or aware they are of the understanding of how much degree of freedom, which is in comparison to how much they can fly, how high they can fly.
Good.
So if maybe could be Zhuangzi could maybe talking about that kind of understanding.
Yes, very good. So, yeah, let us look at it. So, Guo Xiang explains the understanding as well. Actually, Zhuangzi doesn't emphasize on understanding the current situation from a rational point of view or from a conceptual point of view, but instead, he says, they both do not know why they are the way they are. So it is a kind of non-understanding, actually. But they are natural. They are not deliberate. And this is the essence of being carefree. Wow, so it's like denying the kind of understanding Zhuangzi emphasizes. But actually, understanding is not to understand. And also similar for Cheng Xuanying. Cheng Xuanying comments saying that they do not know how far away the destination is, and each takes what they need and achieves their own victory. They have any mechanism unfolds naturally, since they have no intention of distinguishing between high and low. So it is also a kind of denying the difference about understanding. Well, but in my opinion, actually we can understand Zhuangzi's idea of understanding by reading the following text. Actually, there is something. So there are differences between different levels of freedom as described by the Zhuangzi. The first level is already superior. There is a person called Song Rongzi. During his time, he is wise. He is wise enough to fill one office effectively. Good conduct enough to impress one community, virtue enough to please a ruler, talented enough to be caught into service, etc. Okay, these are virtuous, capable people, but there's a guy called Song Rongzi. And Song Rongji laughs at these people, saying, this is not the ideal situation, not the thing that I desire. So what does Song Rongzi desire? What he wants to achieve, he says, I want to achieve a stage such that even if the whole world could condemn me, and I would not move. And also, I can draw a clear line between the internal and the external and recognize the boundaries of true glory and grace. So this is what Song Rongzi wants to achieve, and he thinks is more valuable and important and freer than those officials who are praised by the government. So this is the first level. Actually, Zhuangzi is talking about different levels of spirituality. So the knowledge Zhuangzi is talking about is the perspective of viewing the society or value judgment systems based on a different level of perspective. So we will see. So this is one perspective. Now I have a question. Why is the Zhuangzi talking about internal and external? How do you understand what he means? What is internal? What is external? Why is it important to draw a clear line between the two? What do you think? Just guess. Yes.
Maybe he's talking about the norms of conduct. So external are the norms and that the society has created for people, like the norms that the Confucian is praising. And the internal is your natural norms that you have inside of you.
I like it. This is new interpretation. I like it. Any other guess? Yes? No? Okay. Yes.
I think external demands. Demands is how we are showing as an individual to others and how we are creating the relation between two others is the external demands. And this external demand also not very different how we are internally. It makes our relationship, how we express with others, creating relationship with others. So I think external and internal both are different, but we quite similar to present as an individual people, how we are.
Interesting. So it's about relationships. It's about how you deal with others, how you recognize others. Very good. Now, so, well, this is my interpretation, and you can see if it is reasonable. So my understanding of the Zhuangzi is that external affairs are those one sees no reason to be responsible for. They are external to you. You cannot control their occurrence, etc. So an example is the earthquake. So you are not responsible for the happening of the earthquake. So you don't feel you are responsible for preventing its occurrence. And internal affairs are those you are responsible for. For example, what you choose today to eat, well, maybe you're not responsible because the organization has already arranged it for you. This is not a very good example, but maybe what you wear today to the lecture is really fully responsible, right? So why is there a difference between internal and external affairs? It is because for the Zhuangzi, it is important to notice something that you should not grasp. You should not feel like you have to change it. If it is external, it is not your fault. It's not your responsibility. So you should feel at ease about what is happening, and you should not attach to what the result is. You should not feel like you have the responsibility to change the situation. So understanding something as external actually is a good thing. It let you feel better. You let you release from your stress. So John just, yeah.
Regards to knowledge, they all should be responsible.
Ought.
Is it like is it really discussing knowledge in terms of what we think we ought to do?
Oh, so, well, it is a general claim. So I haven't really talked about normative. I haven't really talked about social value systems. It's just whether you feel like you're responsible for changing the situation. So it's a general claim. Yes. Mutual inferences. Okay, so, well, if you feel like you're an agent and you have to change the situation, then for the Zhuangzi, it is like grasping, attachment, or you're feeling that this is what I have to, how to say, so yeah.
Because actually I read your PowerPoint beforehand. So there is empty of mind. It's just like get rid of those patterns, those principles imposed upon us, so that we have a shape. There is outside environment and inside environment. The external affairs just like the outside environment, and the internal affairs just like the inside organics, just like two different, how to say it, different environments. So it is more like, oh, I know how to respond a proper response and to the outside things around me. And I also know myself, like the capacities, what I need, and how to get along, how the inside get along with the outside.
Good, very good. So, yeah.
So I have, it's a little bit confusing to me when I take an example of war.
War, fighting.
Yes. For example, when you take example of what is happening between Russia and Ukraine,
Good.
leaders are responsible for what is happening. But citizens.
Mhm.
Russian and Ukrainian citizens are not responsible for that.
Oh,
So I'd like to know that when they take the case of war, is it an external affairs or internal affairs?
good. Very good. So it is a subjective attitude. Zhuangzi says, actually, it is good to put aside all these things, including those you think you are responsible for. So normally we think we are responsible for our life and death, right? So you have to keep healthy, you have to eat healthy food, you have to exercise. So it's your responsibility to keep healthy, or otherwise you will die young, right? This is like your responsibility is so obvious. But Zhuangzi doesn't think like that. Zhuangzi says if your spirituality is high enough, actually, you will view life and death as external. So it's kind of a subjective attitude towards everything. It is so I forgot how to Tuneman. Tuneman says, well, it seems like the war, actually the citizens are also responsible for the war because you participate in it. Of course, this is a normal understanding. We feel like we have a lot of responsibilities. We have social responsibilities, we have moral responsibilities. As a student, we have certain responsibilities. As a citizen, we have certain responsibilities, etc. So we have so many things involved. But Zhuangzi says, okay, this is a kind of conventional view about what we are situated, what we should do, etc. But ultimately speaking, from the perspective of the Tao, are you really responsible even for your own life, even for your death? Well, he has a very special view. Mhm.
Sitting somewhere and there is a war, it would be an external affair for me.
External affair for you. But for your own country, if it is in the war, then maybe you have a little bit of responsibility, right? It's not other country, it's your own country. Then maybe you feel I have to go to the street. I have to protest. I have to say I pro this side and I do not pro that side.
Like our birth is external affair. We are not controlling that. Because we are leading our life in the different conditions and situations. It's like how we are living our life with our colleagues, with the other the out of the class, and being a citizens of the India and citizens of and the part of the earth is all it's our responsibility. So it's an internal affair.
Internal affairs.
How we are dealing with the good or bad situations.
Yes.
Because being an individual, so we have some certain responsibility how we are representing ourselves and devoting ourselves for the others.
Good. Yes. So we feel like we have a lot of responsibility. Zhuangzi says actually, from the perspective of the Tao, if you are unified with the Tao, you can see that your attachment or your understanding of your own responsibilities are less than what you imagine. So there are several steps. So here we're talking about Song Rongzi, right? He looks at those officials who are praised by the government. He laughs at them. He says, no, this is not what I want to achieve. What I want to achieve is, even if the whole world condemns me, I don't feel any pain. Even the whole world praises me, I don't feel any happiness. Why? And then Zhuangzi says, okay, Song Rongzi obviously has a higher spiritual level than those officials. But he still ground he left unturned. There is still something he is not yet achieved. Why Song Rongzi had not planted himself firmly. So there are different levels of freedom. So Song Rongzi is not yet the freest person in the world. The officials, the virtuous officials, of course, they are not free. Why? So Zhuangzi's idea is free is freedom of the mind. So the officials, even if they are praised by the government, they are not free, because if the government change their attitude towards them, they will not be happy, right? So they try their best to perform very well, and the government likes them, but well, situation can change. They may not be able to sustain the status. And if this status is not sustained, they feel depressed, they are no longer praised, etc. So their happiness depends on the government's attitude towards them. So it is very fragile, according to Zhuangzi. So your happiness, your value depends on how others look at you. It depends on the society. It depends on the interaction, the environment, etc. So this is very low, spiritually speaking, and it's not free, spiritually speaking. So Song Rongzi is superior in terms of freedom, in terms of happiness. Song Rongzi is free because Song Rongzi, even if the whole world condemn him, he does not feel bad, right? Even if the whole world praises him, he does not feel happy. So his mental status is not dependent on the external environment. So in this aspect, he is superior, he is free. He's more free than the officials. But Zhuangzi says he's not actually planted himself firmly. So the next thing is Liezi. So Liezi is a legendary person. Nobody knows whether this person exists. But the story is like saying that Liezi knows how to fly. So he is a hermit. He is a kind of spiritual person that practices the cultivation of the Tao such that he can fly. So Liezi could ride the wind and go soaring around with cool and breezy skill, but after 15 days, he comes back to Earth. So he has a limitation. He only can fly for 15 days, and he can only fly when there is strong wind. So because, it's like a bird. You have to rely on the wind in order to fly. So I'm not an aeroplane engineer, but I don't understand the mechanism. But, according to the story, you need the wind's help in order to fly. So, for Zhuangzi, even Liezi, who can fly, is still not at the highest level. Why? He says, it is because there is still something for which he had to wait. You depend on the wind in order to fly. So you are still dependent on something. If there is no wind, you cannot fly. And, you will be less happy if you cannot fly. So your psychology depends on whether there is wind or not. So you have something that you depend on. So your spirituality is not high enough. So what kind of person have the highest spirituality according to Zhuangzi? Okay, Guo Xiang has a commentary here. Guo Xiang says, only those who can ride on anything do not need to depend on. This kind of person is having the highest spirituality. And also Cheng Xianying's commentary says, you can see at all these stages Zhuangzi has described, from the officials and to Song Rongzi, from Song Rongzi to Liezi, and from Liezi to the highest, below the highest, all these people have something they depend on. They all have conditions. So the only case where you can be free from all dependence is to follow the nature of all things. Only when you follow the nature that you don't depend on anything. Well, so let us go back to the differentiation between the internal and the external. So why is Zhuangzi talking about internal and external and the differences? It is because if you believe that a lot of things are internal, then you feel like you have to alter the situation in order to modify or control. Yeah. Then if something is out of your control, you feel disappointed. Actually, you depend on the situation to make you happy. For example, you feel like I am responsible for my health. And if suddenly something happens, you feel extremely uncomfortable. So your happiness depends on your health condition. So you are psychologically dependent on your health situation because you believe that your health situation is internal to you. You feel responsible for what has occurred. But if you believe that something is external to you, then even if something occurs, which is not ideal, if you believe that you're not responsible for that, you don't feel extremely unhappy, you don't feel disappointed, you don't regret, you don't blame yourself, right? So Zhuangzi says, actually, it is to practice externalizing things. So it's an attitude. It's not arguing that actually everything is externalized. It is to say that it is better to externalize things. So Zhuangzi says, if you are practicing the Tao, like Peng Liang Yi, you have to externalize everything. So after 3 days, Peng Liang Yi was able to put the world aside, outside himself. So it sounds like very non-Confucian, right? Confucius says, oh, you have to be responsible for everything. 先天下之忧而忧. You have to be worried about everything before other people worry. So you have to put a lot of responsibility to yourself. And Johnson says, no, you have to put all the responsibilities out of yourself. You put the whole world outside yourself. And then his teacher kept at him for 7 days, so he's doing the meditation. And after that, Peng Liang Yi was able to put things outside himself. So I believe that I possess a lot of material things, for example. Well, actually, I don't have a house. I'm living with my parents. But you can imagine, I'm not sure who is the owner of your housing property. Nobody. So neither do I. I don't have a house. So you can imagine you have a pet, or you have, I don't know what you have, a bicycle. So you feel like this is mine. This is internal, right? This is internal to me. I'm responsible for it. I own it. It is my thing. I control how to use it, etc. Well, this is very normal, and it may be necessary for moral theories because ownership is very important. But Zhuangzi, as a spiritual leader, advises us not to have that kind of internalization of properties. He says it is better to put things outside yourself, such that even if your bicycle is lost, you don't feel like it is your responsibility.
Excuse me, yes, is it something like Rousseau's general will, where he's differentiating between the real and the actual will, where he's saying if you have a general will, then you think for yourself as well, for your happiness as well, but at the same time, you are responsible for the happiness of the society as well. So somewhere I can see a parallel situation where Rousseau, maybe he was not talking about spirituality, but at the same time common shared responsibilities of the individuals in society. Comparing the Western political thought with the this classical philosophy. So somewhere I can see parallelism.
Oh, yeah. I think Zhuangzi is more like not really concerning about what is happening out there. But Rousseau may be more concerned with what is happening in the world. So I shouldn't be self-concerned. I should be concerned about the whole world, right? And Zhuangzi is like, I should not be concerned.
But he was talking about the responsibilities. So, like, I can see a freedom aspect, be it spiritual or non-spiritual. But the social responsibility is also somewhere he is making individuals responsible for the society. Maybe I may have a little knowledge about the Chinese philosophy, but somewhere I can see the parallel.
Yeah, you can write an essay on that, comparing differences and similarities between the two views. Good. Yeah.
Continue with her talk. I remember in the chapter 2, maybe their Zhuangzi says that the person who does not take the court affairs as a thing, only the person who won't take the court affairs as a thing, so that he is capable of be the emperor of the world.
Yeah, similar. Yeah, something similar.
So
So
I don't know why
You don't know.
this person he doesn't care the
Doesn't care.
the things. Yeah, nothing will confine him. Like I will take possession. I have no 我知 I have no fixed attachment to anything. So how can
you
be
you should
capable
change the
of
spirituality?
the position of
How can you do anything? Basically, is it something like that? How can you hold a position?
How can he be the emperor of the whole nation, because he's not attached to anything? Like if he's really take the responsibility of the well-being of the whole world.
So it's
the
like
whole
if you
nation.
don't feel like this is your own country, how can you ruin it?
I mean,
Right?
attachment has to be there with the well-being and social attachment, just not being a spirituality is just detaching somewhere and just self-focused, self-centered. Somewhere it's breaking the connection.
Zhuangzi will say actually it's not self-centered. It's not just focusing on the self. It is dissolving the self into the great thoroughfare. Because if you think there is something internal, then you still have the discrimination between this is mine and that is not mine. So you still have the existence of the internal, right? Then that would make you suffer if you believe in something that is internal. So you have to make the internal become external in order to free yourself from attachments and free yourself from dependence. There is the very important notion called dependence, and we will talk about it.
So, like about what you said, so does Zhuangzi say that dependency on internal and external, affairs creates sort of circumstances for expectations, because like you shouldn't depend on it because it is beyond your control?
Yes.
Is that the reason? Is that what Zhuangzi says?
Something similar. So,
Ma'am, is this theory similar to theory of determination?
determination?
Yeah,
Freedom.
determinism.
Oh, determinism.
Yeah.
Well, Zhuangzi doesn't really explicitly mention determinism. It is not to say that because all the things are determined already, so we don't need to care about it. So Zhuangzi doesn't really have that kind of view written in his book. But the attitude is actually if you differentiate yourself from the rest of the world and you feel like I am an agent, I wish to be like this, I don't wish to be like that, I have to change myself, I have to force myself into a particular shape, having a particular set of behaviors, then you are putting yourself out of the doubt. So it is like you are concentrating on your agency, your ability to change the world. So he's fighting against the transformation of the world. And this is not how we should live our living. This is not free. So if you want to wander freely in the world, you have to go back into align with the Tao. And you have to flow freely, not to depend on any situation. Not to force yourself to become somebody, not to force yourself to change to become something ideal, but instead just to follow what happens. So you become an observer instead of being an actor. You put aside your activity but dissolve into passivity. Passivity. Yeah.
No, you played it. You played it.
You get it?
I get it.
Okay. So it is like a bit pessimistic. It's like forcing you guys not to be active. But yeah, indeed, Zhuangzi has that kind of attitude towards life.
Maybe just like the man swimming in the rapid water, you cannot go against it if you want to swim. You just make use of the current, the forces of the water. So
Yeah. So there is something similar in Buddhism. If you practice meditation and you emphasize on controlling your mind, then you can never achieve ultimate peace or calm, because you still grasp your subjectivity, you still grasp your agency, and you still separate your agency from the mental state. It's like mental state is something I have to control. I don't want to be angry, so I have to delete the anger in my mind. I saw some attachments, so I have to change the attachments. So you are always putting yourself as the controller and the agent, you will suffer. So in Buddhism, meditation is just to observe, not to force yourself to change the mental state. Even if it occurs to be non-desirable, even if there are so many anger bursting out from your mind, don't control it, don't push it, suppress it. Just let it burst out. You are the observer. You are not the controller. You are external to your mental state. So this is how Buddhism helps you understand yourself and be peaceful with what is occurring even inside your inner mental states, even for your behaviors. You become less controlling and more observing, and this helps you to release yourself from attachments and that free yourself. So this is the similarity between Buddhism and Daoism. And actually, Daoism also emphasizes on meditation and also attachments, but the term is different. For Daoism, the term is Wu Dai, non-dependence. Dai is dependence. Wu Dai is good. Dai is psychologically dependent, which is not desirable. So you can see there's a huge difference between Taoism and Confucianism in terms of responsibility. So it's very subjective. So I kept at him for 9 days more, and after that, he was able to put life outside himself. This is also very similar to Buddhism. So if you practice Chan meditation, what would the Chan master say to you? He would say, even if you see evil when you are meditating, just don't control what is occurring in your mind. Let it occur. If you see Buddha in your meditation, what should you do? Just let him be there. Don't feel happy, don't feel glorious, honored when Buddha visits you. That's actually nothing. You just put the Buddha outside of yourself. They just occur. All these are just happenings. They are like sceneries you look at when you're on the bus. You're just a passenger in the bus. You cannot control the scenery, right? Don't grasp anything. So even if you know that 10 minutes later you will die if you're meditating, forget about it. So they will say, if you want to achieve enlightenment, if you want to understand reality, you should put aside even your existence. So here's the idea. After that, you are able to put life outside of yourself. Life and death is not under your control. You just is an observer. Then you can surpass the fear of life and death, and you are no longer unhappy about life, happy about life or unhappy about death, because you have put aside, externalized life and death. And in this stage, you can be called a free person because you are free from all the worries in the world. You are no longer psychologically dependent. So you can see Zhuangzi's idea of freedom is extremely different from the Western notion of freedom of will, right? So for Zhuangzi, freedom is correlated with psychological dependence. If you have a lot of psychological dependence, for example, you are worried about your children, you're worried about your father, your parents, you're worried about your future, you really want to be a medical doctor, you're so worried, you cannot eat, you cannot sleep, you feel like if you cannot pass the exam, it's the end of your life, right? Then you are not free. But if you really can surpass all these, even if your children is not healthy, you don't feel unhappy. It's difficult, right? But you can practice. So Buddhism, Taoism urge us to practice surpassing the attachment, but still caring your relatives, caring your friends, helping them without attachment, without dependence, psychological dependence. Then this is what is free. What is freedom? So there are different levels. Song Rongzi is higher than the officials because he is psychologically independent of praises and critical comments. And Liezi is higher than Song Rongzi because he, of course, does not care about worldly affairs, but he depends on the wind. So he has a little bit of psychological dependence. Okay, so, oh, I haven't put the final stage. Okay, this is the final stage. According to the Zhuangzi, Zhuangzi says, if he had only marked on the truth of heaven and earth, written the changes of the six briefs, and transcended through the boundness, then what would he had to depend on? If you really follow along the nature, what is changing? You're following with the transformation. You don't go against it, then you are free. You don't depend on anything. And he said, therefore I say, the perfect man has no self, the holy man has no merit, and the sage has no faith. Now, question. No question? Oh, okay. So I have a question. Oh, yes.
Yes, you mentioned meditation.
Meditation.
In Taoism, so I wanted to know what exactly was Chinese meditation before the entering of Buddhism, and if it was only the Taoist school who mentioned meditation or any of the school.
Good. So during the Warring States period, my understanding is only Taoism mentions meditation. Like legalism, Maoism, Confucianism, no, they don't mention meditation. And for the Taoist tradition, meditation is called 坐忘. 坐 is the sitting, 忘 is the forgetting. So sitting and forgetting, something like that. And there are descriptions of how you can do the meditation and achieve the forgetting about the self, the forgetting about the worldly affairs, etc. in the Zhuangzi. Yeah. Yes.
So
I love Taoism, but I struggle with this. It seems to me it removes the beauty of life. Like I like being dependent on I love my nieces and nephews. I don't want to be non-attached to them. I think what makes us human is these attachments we have. Like
Yes.
I think without that, I think my life would be like a zombie. My life would.
So it's like,
I don't want
what
to
is the meaning of life?
Yeah, I don't want to live in that world where I just don't have attachment to my nephews and nieces or my family or
Okay.
my job. I enjoy it. And I also, maybe try my word. Hatred isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it makes me feel alive if you hate somebody. I hate somebody. To hate something.
Very good. Good question. What is the difference between emotions and attachment? What do you think? Is a sage having emotions? Is a sage having the feeling of happiness when he's doing what he likes to do? What do you think?
I think if, so David said that if you have, for instance, nieces and nephews, or if you have something nice that you cherish, and it can make you feel happy. But if you have something that you cherish and then you lose it, it will make you very sad. So maybe the idea is that if you are not attached to anything, then you can protect yourself from the emotions that are negative. But it also comes at the price of not having those positive emotions or those attachments.
Can there be attachments without emotions?
Attachments without emotions.
Can there be attachments without
Good
emotions?
question.
No, because you have attachment, like you want to have control of something. If you are out of control of it, you will feel disappointed.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's what I agree with. So, like, I'm asking on a contrary. That can there be attachments without emotions?
That will be very material then. Attachments without emotion would mean material.
But even with materialistic things, you have some emotions related to it, don't you? Like, if you have an attachment to money for whatever reason, whether money buys you happiness or money helps you get things that you have happiness, so there is a direct connection to happiness or joy emotion to it, isn't there?
Good, yeah. I am inclined to say that if there are attachments, die, in Zhuangzi's term, die, then you will be disappointed, and disappointment is a kind of, psychological, affective experience. I'm not sure if emotion is the exact word, because contemporary psychologists differentiate different kinds of things. Like emotions are episodes you feel at this moment, but affection is more like dispositional, long term. Yeah.
Ma'am, as I have knowledge of Indian philosophy. In Indian philosophy, there is one word, sambhav. Sambhav. You always have your same emotion. Either is a emotion, always state your mind and conscious in the same level, whatever is happening inside or outside. Don't attach with the things. See, being a eyes and see the things. Don't involve in that. Participate in that, but don't involve in that. That practice only help you to not control your emotions, deal with that situations. That's philosophy work in India.
Yeah, very similar. Yeah. So concerning David's question about whether it is boring if I don't have anger, if I don't attach, if I don't have hobbies, right? Well, I guess, so, there are different interpretations of the Zhuangzi. Some philosophers think that indeed Zhuangzi says there is no emotions. If you become a sage, if there is no dependence, no dai, then you become more like without emotions, without hobbies. But my interpretation is a little bit different. I'm influenced by Buddhism. That's why my interpretation is a kind of Buddhist interpretation. So in the Zhuangzi, so you guys do aesthetics, right? Aesthetics. So in the Zhuangzi, there's a lot of descriptions about how beautiful the world is and how gorgeous if you understand the Tao. So you can see that in the story about the Peng bird. So the poem is what? Whoa, the world is so beautiful. It is blue. And I look down, there's dust. And I fly in a way that I'm so free. And it's a gorgeous picture of what my horizon, you know, manifest to me. So I believe that Zhuangzi actually thinks that if you are a sage, you have emotions and you have happy feelings. You can still have hobbies. You can still enjoy your food, like not sure what kind of fruit you like, apple, whatever. So if there is an apple, you are happy, you enjoyed it. But if there is no apple, you won't feel disappointed. You won't feel attached. You won't feel addicted to it. You won't feel like I have headache if I don't have the apple. So there is, I think, a difference between attachments and emotions.
But would you really enjoy it though? Like, I mean, yeah, you might have the potential to do it, but if you're not attached, enjoyment seems intrinsically linked to attachment. I mean, I don't just, if I'm not attached to anything, I won't enjoy anything, I won't feel anything. It seems they're not separate and distinct, I don't think you do.
So you think I have to be attached to something in order to like it, enjoy it?
If I wasn't, everything I like in the world is in the world. There's nothing I like about myself.
Yeah.
There's nothing like just that purely I like that's just me. That sounds interesting, but I mean, there's nothing pure. I mean, like to me is outward orientation. It's like that word. Same as hatred about the word. Emotions are outward oriented.
Okay, so in Buddhism, after I turn to you. So in Buddhism, there is an example saying that you can have enjoyment without attachment. So the Buddhist saying is, if you are attached to, for example, your frames, then if people say that you are not good or people criticize you, you feel bad, right? And you walk out to the garden, you see the full moon, you don't really enjoy the scenery. So this is a Buddhist story. And
It refers to a fixed model or a standard. Instead of like emotions or something, or a fixed perspective. For example, you think death is a really bad thing. So when Zhuangzi's wife died, the people think he should be sorry, he should cry because his wife died. But Zhuangzi actually said that at the beginning, yeah, true, I'm so sad because he think his wife passed away, but later he thought, who knows what will happen to her after her death. Maybe death is not a bad thing, who knows. Just a different perspective, not a fixed perspective that the death is a bad thing.
Yeah,
So
I'd rather be a blubbering mess when my wife dies. To me, I'd rather have that attachment. I'd rather feel the loss of my wife dying than just not feel anything.
okay, yeah, I will finish with the Buddhist story and then we will take a break and we can discuss more, okay? So the Buddhist saying is that if you are attached, your mind is full of kind of rubbish, you're full of expectations, you're full of anger. So if you go down to see the full moon in the garden, you may not fully appreciate it. If you drink a cup of hot tea, and if you're still thinking about all these issues, you don't experience the comfort of the tea that brings to you. But if your mind is empty, you don't have attachments, every single time, for example, you walk under the sun, you like the warmth. You walk under the garden, you see the full moon, you appreciate the full moon. If you drink a cup of hot tea, you experience the whole warmth that goes into your stomach. So you enjoy every moment of your life if you do not have attachments. So all these positive emotions naturally flow out if you clean up your mind and remove attachments from your mind. So positive emotions manifest itself. It is not like I have to pursue something in order to experience happiness. It's more like life is already an unfold of happiness. So this is Buddhism. Of course, this is Daoism, but I am using Buddhism to understand Daoism here. Well, yeah, there may be different interpretation. Yeah. So, well, we haven't talked about why there is no self for the sages and the perfect man, but I think I think we need a break. So let us do a
10 minutes maybe?
okay, 10 minutes,
50?
10:50. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.